In the vast emptiness of space, an anomaly appeared, defying the laws of physics and human understanding. The Epsilon Vortex, as it was named, was more than just a tear in the fabric of time and space. It was a portal to something no one yet understood. Sent by the powerful Nexus organization, a group of specialists was gathered to face the unknown. They didn't know what awaited them beyond the Vortex's boundary, only that no previous team had ever returned. At the heart of this mission was Director Arcos, an enigmatic figure carrying secrets even his own men didn't know. With each passing moment, the Vortex seemed to change, distorting reality around it. Scientists, mercenaries, and explorers united in this final attempt to decipher the mysteries of the Vortex, though they understood this mission could be their last. Among the team, fear and uncertainty were palpable. Dr. Alara, haunted by the loss of her family in a space disaster, saw this mission as a chance for redemption. Riker, a hardened mercenary, kept his weapons close and his eyes even closer. Terran, the alien linguist, knew more about the Kair, an ancient alien civilization linked to the Vortex, than he let on. And Kaiden, the military strategist, questioned Nexus's true intentions. The Vortex awaited them. As they drew closer, the temporal distortions and signs of instability intensified. The unknown lurked ahead, and they were about to discover that some secrets are best left buried in time. Their journey to the Vortex wasn't just a scientific exploration. It was a descent into the deepest mysteries of reality itself. Nexus, an organization known for its discretion, had gathered specialists from across the star system for a meeting that would change the course of history. Director Zane Arcos, an intimidating figure, entered the room with a commanding presence. His eyes seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 secrets. "You were chosen for a reason," he said, his deep voice resonating through the room. The individuals present, a diverse group of scientists, mercenaries, and explorers, exchanged silent glances. Dr. Alara, an astrobiologist with a painful past, crossed her arms suspiciously. Beside her, Riker, a man of few words, watched closely, analyzing Arcos's every move. Without wasting time, Arcos projected a holographic image of a massive vortex at the center of the galaxy. "This is the Epsilon Vortex," he began. "A temporal anomaly that not only defies the laws of physics but conceals something far greater. Our mission is simple: explore its mysteries and bring back answers." His voice dropped to a dark whisper. "But know this, those who came before you never returned." The tension in the room immediately escalated. Some whispered, others remained in anxious silence. Arcos continued. "The Kair civilization, which inhabited the depths of the universe, may have something to do with this. We need answers, and you are our last chance to find them." Terran, an expert in alien linguistics, furrowed his brow, visibly uncomfortable. He knew more than he was revealing, but kept his secret for the time being. Kaiden, the military strategist, eyed Arcos warily. Something wasn't right. Why was this mission so secretive? And why them? He sensed a treacherous presence in the air, but couldn't pinpoint its source. When the meeting ended, each team member carried a mix of excitement and fear. The mission wasn't just about exploring the Vortex. It was a quest for truth that could forever change humanity's understanding of the universe. Yet no one dared to ask what really happened to the previous team. The hook was set. Something dark lurked within the Vortex, something even Nexus, with all its resources, had failed to uncover. Now this team would have to find out, or perish trying. The newly recruited team barely had time to digest Arcos's words when their transport whisked them to Nexus's advanced command center. The massive observation deck, surrounded by reinforced glass windows, offered a direct view of the Epsilon Vortex. There it was, spinning in a hypnotic cycle of distorted colors and deep shadows. The Vortex's mere presence seemed to warp reality around it. "So, this is it," murmured Dr. Alara, unable to look away. "It's much larger than I imagined." The silence was broken by a robotic voice emerging from the walls of the observation room. "Epsilon Vortex detected at 30,000 units. Temporal anomalies confirmed. Extreme danger." The lights in the room dimmed, and a hologram of the Vortex's internal structure projected into the air. The Vortex's layers extended in multiple directions as if time itself were colliding. The automated voice continued its technical exposition. "Temporal disturbances at outer boundaries. Disappearance of objects unconfirmed. Critical distance for safety. 10,000 units. Terran, the alien linguist, squinted, trying to grasp the implications. He knew the Kier, a race that mysteriously vanished millennia ago, could be connected to this anomaly. Ancient texts mentioned a rift in space-time, something that aligned with the Vortex's characteristics. If this vortex is connected to the Kier, he thought, then the secrets it holds are far deeper than Nexus imagines. Riker, always pragmatic, eyed the vortex with skepticism. This mission smells like trouble, temporal anomalies, that only means one thing: chaos. Kaiden, the strategist, remained silent, watching everyone's movements. He knew Nexus was withholding information. The previous teams, briefly mentioned, never returned. He was prepared for the worst, but had to stay ahead of any betrayal that might occur. The vortex, in all its grandeur and mystery, wasn't just an anomaly in space-time. It was a boundary, a line between human understanding and something far older and more relentless. Whatever lay at its center, beyond the temporal distortions, could be a threat or a groundbreaking discovery. Dr. Alara stepped forward, absorbing the readings. If we cross this boundary, we may never return the same way we entered. Her voice carried a mix of fascination and fear. With every passing minute, the team found themselves more drawn to and terrified by what the vortex might reveal. As the temporal anomalies intensified, they knew there was no turning back. Entering the vortex meant more than a simple exploration. It meant confronting the very fabric of time and space, with the consequences of tampering with something that perhaps shouldn't be touched. As the team prepared to analyze the data and familiarize themselves with the equipment, Dr. Alara felt a familiar weight settle in her chest. Arcos's words about the vortex and its dangers brought back memories she had been trying to suppress for years. With a deep sigh, she stepped away from the group, seeking a moment of silence in one of Nexus's resting areas. She sat in a chair near a panoramic window that offered a view of the infinite stars. There alone, Alara allowed herself to revisit the past, something she avoided at all costs. Her thoughts took her back to the most painful moment of her life: the loss of her family. Her daughter, Lyra, and her husband, Ethan, had died during a space expedition that went horribly wrong. The accident occurred when Lyra was just 8 years old. Alara had been on a mission in another star system and hadn't been able to say goodbye. The feeling of helplessness had consumed her ever since. "I failed them," she whispered to herself as a solitary tear rolled down her cheek. Images of Lyra running through green fields, laughing alongside Ethan, flooded her mind. These moments of pure joy were now tainted by tragedy. Alara often wondered if she could have done something differently. And this vortex, it stirred her mind in ways she couldn't explain. It was as if time around the vortex was in constant flux, and part of her believed that somehow her answers lay there, at the heart of this anomaly. Alara knew this mission could be her last chance for redemption. She had thrown herself into space, fleeing her memories, her pain. But now, everything seemed to converge on this moment, this mission. Perhaps, just perhaps, the vortex held something to reveal about the fate of her family. Something she had never expected to find, but deep down, desired more than anything else. When Riker appeared to remind her it was time to return to the lab, Alara quickly wiped away her tears. She couldn't show vulnerability, not now. They needed her expertise, and she needed to stay focused. With one last glance at the stars, Dr. Alara stood up. The memories still weighed on her heart, but she knew the only way forward was to face the vortex and the secrets it hid. Perhaps inside, she would find not only the answers for the mission, but also for the questions that had tormented her since losing her family. Riker had always been a man of few words, but his thoughts were sharp and strategic. He didn't trust anyone easily, especially powerful organizations like Nexus. When Arcos presented the mission, Riker quickly realized that much more was at stake than their superiors were revealing. The vortex was a dangerous anomaly, that much was clear, but the brief mentions of previous teams that had never returned left Riker suspicious. Something wasn't right. While the other team members busied themselves with their own preparations, Riker silently observed everything. He always preferred to watch before acting. And on this ship, every detail seemed suspicious. Why would Nexus keep crucial information about previous missions a secret? And why was there so much secrecy surrounding the connection with the Care civilization? None of it made sense. The standard protocol would be to inform the team of all the risks involved, but it seemed Nexus was willing to sacrifice anyone for its own agenda. During a break, Riker approached Kaiden, the military strategist. "Do you think Nexus is being completely honest with us?" Riker asked, breaking the silence with his deep voice. Kaiden looked up, surprised. "You're suggesting they're hiding something?" Riker glanced sideways at the flashing monitors in the control room. "Something about this mission doesn't sit right with me. Teams disappearing, an alien civilization involved, and no one here seems to have a clear answer. They've sent us into the unknown without even ensuring we have a way to come back." Kaiden remained silent for a moment. He had his own reservations, but as a strategist, his loyalty was to the mission. "We have to trust the process," he said, trying to reassure Riker, though even in his own words there was a hint of doubt. Riker shook his head. "Trust is not something I give lightly. Nexus might be using us for something bigger than we're prepared for. What if they know more about this vortex than they're admitting? If the previous teams disappeared, how can we be sure we won't share the same fate?" Kaiden knew Riker was right to raise questions, but he also knew that, at this moment, they had few options. The mission was already in motion, and openly questioning Nexus's intentions could put them all in danger. "Keep your eyes open," Kaiden finally said. "But until we have proof, we need to keep moving forward. We don't have a choice." Riker nodded, but something inside him continued to whisper that they were being manipulated. He was there as a mercenary, hired to protect the team, but he was beginning to wonder if the real danger came from the heart of Nexus itself. As the ship's systems issued a proximity alert to the vortex, Riker closed his eyes for a moment, trying to calm the wave of uncertainty consuming him. He knew that once inside the vortex, any mistake could be fatal, and right now, he only trusted himself to make sure they made it out alive. Terran, the alien linguistics expert, had always been an enigmatic figure within the team. From the very beginning, his knowledge of the Kier civilization placed him in a position of importance, but it also raised suspicions. He seemed to know much more than he was willing to share. The mere mention of the Kier would make his eyes gleam in a strange, almost reverent way. As the team prepared for the mission, Terran remained distant, quietly observing the vortex analyses with a silence that bordered on discomfort. The truth was, he had more than just an academic interest in the Kier. There were secrets buried in his own past that he had never revealed to Nexus. Secrets that now threatened to come to light. One night, while the rest of the team was busy with final preparations, Dr. Alara found Terran poring over ancient records of the Kier civilization. Her eyes narrowed as she saw the images of old symbols and inscriptions. "Terran," Alara began as she approached him, "why have you never spoken about your connection to the Kier? It seems like you know more than you're willing to share." Terran looked up slowly, carefully choosing his words. "What do you mean by connection?" Alara crossed her arms, keeping her tone firm. "You have an almost obsessive fascination with them. What aren't you telling us?" For a moment, silence hung between them. Terran knew that hiding the truth wouldn't get him far, but revealing too much could jeopardize his own personal mission. He took a deep breath before responding. "The Kier are not just an ancient civilization to me. They influenced my life in ways you cannot imagine." Alara raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Influenced how?" "I encountered traces of them when I was very young, during an expedition that should never have happened. It was my first experience with alien artifacts. Since then, I've been trying to understand the true extent of their power." Terran paused, his words filled with mystery. What we're about to discover in the vortex could be something far beyond what Nexus imagines. Alara could sense that there was more to the story, but Terran wasn't ready to share everything. Even so, his warning was enough to put her on alert. If the vortex was somehow connected to the Kier, the mission could be far more dangerous than they had anticipated. "If you know something that could help us, you need to tell the team," Alara said, trying to remain calm. Terran stood up, his expression serious. "Everything will be revealed in due time. But for now, just know that the vortex isn't just a portal to the unknown. It could be a key or a trap." With those words, he left Alara alone, contemplating what might be hidden within the depths of the vortex. Tension between the team members was mounting, and Terran's secret was just one of many mysteries they would have to confront. The tension within Nexus was palpable. With the vortex spinning ominously in the distance, the team knew that the moment of departure was near. The experimental ship, designed specifically to withstand the temporal distortions of the vortex, was ready, but few truly trusted its ability to return intact. Nexus engineers assured everyone that all systems were operational, but even the most optimistic among the team knew that dealing with a temporal anomaly was far beyond the limits of human technology. In the hangar, the massive hull of the ship gleamed under fluorescent lights. Its design was completely unlike any conventional spacecraft. Smooth, aerodynamic lines and a pulsing magnetic field surrounding the ship gave it an almost alien appearance. The new technologies incorporated, some based on reverse-engineered K'ur technology, made Riker even more suspicious. To him, nothing that was so experimental should be trusted. Kaidan, always vigilant, coordinated the preparations with military precision. He knew that organization inside the ship could mean the difference between life and death once they crossed the vortex's boundary. "Check all systems. No mistakes will be tolerated," his voice echoed through the hangar. Crew members rushed back and forth, making final adjustments. As the team prepared, Dr. Alara was fine-tuning her research instruments, but her mind was elsewhere. Torn between the mission and the memories of her family, something deeply unsettled her. She glanced out the hangar window, seeing the vortex in the distance. The feeling that time was unraveling in incomprehensible ways sent shivers down her spine. Terran, on the other hand, appeared exceptionally calm. He observed everything from afar, as if he already knew what was about to happen. His serene demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension of the others. He understood that the ship was merely a means to an end, but what truly concerned him lay beyond the metal walls. Riker checked his gear, his weapons, and his spacesuit, but his attention was on Arcos. The Nexus director had been absent from the preparation area, something Riker found odd. To him, Arcos always seemed to know something others didn't, and his absence at such a critical moment was, at the very least, suspicious. "All systems are ready, Commander," one of the engineers reported to Kaidan, who nodded in approval. Kaidan turned to the team and gathered them near the ship. "We're ready to depart. This mission is our only chance to discover what's inside the vortex. There won't be a second attempt. You all know the risks. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time." No one moved. Backing out wasn't an option, not after everything they had been through to get here. Each of them had their own reason for being there, their own demons to confront, and none of them were willing to leave it all behind. "Let's do this," Riker said, his voice cold with determination. As the team boarded the ship, the engines began. Kaidan had always been known for his strategic mind, capable of anticipating moves before they even happened. With his experience in covert military operations, he knew that trust within a team was essential to the success of any mission. But as the preparations for the vortex crossing intensified, a disturbing feeling began to form in his mind. Someone on the team might be acting with ulterior motives. It all started with small signs Kaidan had noticed since the beginning of the mission. Subtle comments, hidden glances, seemingly omitted information. He had always prided himself on his ability to read people and the situation he was in, and now every instinct told him that something was wrong within Nexus itself. As he monitored the final preparations of the ship, Kaidan made sure to review the records of previous missions, those in which teams had mysteriously disappeared. He knew Nexus was a powerful organization, but it was also infamous for covering up information. And now, the way Arcos had handled the issue of the past missions only deepened his distrust. That night, while the others rested before the Great Jump, Kaidan quietly slipped into the ship's control room. Nexus's security systems were advanced, but he had his own skills to access confidential records. What he found only confirmed his suspicions. Hidden files about the previous teams, reports that had never been mentioned to anyone. The reports indicated that the teams who entered the vortex were subjected to tests that hadn't been approved by Nexus's ethical standards. The organization had been using the teams as guinea pigs to understand the vortex's behavior. And, worse still, there were signs that certain crew members might be directly involved in keeping these experiments a secret. Kaiden quickly closed the files when he heard footsteps approaching. It was Terran. The alien linguistics expert entered the room, seemingly unaware that Kaiden was there. But Kaiden knew how to read people, and Terran didn't seem entirely surprised to see him. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Terran asked, his voice calm, but with a hint of curiosity. "Checking the ship's systems. We can't afford to make mistakes, you know that," Kaiden replied, keeping his expression neutral. Terran took a step closer, his eyes searching for some hidden answer in Kaiden. "We have to trust Nexus, Kaiden. They know what they're doing." But Kaiden wasn't convinced. He knew Terran was hiding something, just like the others. Nexus always had its motivations, and now Kaiden felt that someone on the team might be colluding with the organization, keeping secrets that could put everyone's lives at risk. "Maybe," Kaiden finally replied, trying not to raise more suspicion, "but I'm going to make sure everyone knows what's at stake here." Terran shrugged, but the look in his eyes revealed that he knew more than he was letting on. When he left the room, Kaiden stood in silence for a moment, trying to piece together the puzzle. If Terran was involved with Nexus in something bigger, Kaiden would need to find out before it was too late. A betrayal within the team could mean the failure of the mission, and possibly the death of everyone aboard. With his suspicions now strengthened, Kaiden prepared for what was to come. He knew he would have to keep an eye on everyone, and that the real battle might be fought within the ship, long before they faced the dangers of the Vortex. As the ship prepared to embark on its journey toward the Vortex, the tension was palpable. The crew, focused on their preparations, had no idea they were about to be confronted with a devastating truth. A truth that Nexus had carefully concealed. However, this revelation wouldn't remain hidden for much longer. Kaiden, still harboring his suspicions, decided to act. He had sensed something was wrong from the beginning, but now he was more determined than ever to uncover what had really happened to the previous missions. In a meeting with the team, he seized the moment of silence before launch to bring up the question everyone feared to ask. "We need to know the truth about what happened to the previous team. Why didn't they come back?" Kaiden said seriously, looking directly at Arcos, who was watching from a remote control room. The room fell into a heavy silence. Dr. Alara, Riker, and the other crew members exchanged surprised glances. This was not part of the mission briefing. Arcos remained calm for a moment, but Kaiden could see a slight hesitation in his eyes before he responded. "These are risks inherent in any exploration," Arcos began, his voice measured. "We knew that sending teams into the Vortex would be dangerous. Not everyone is prepared for the challenges it presents." Kaiden stepped forward, his expression hard. "You're avoiding the question. We know there's more to it than that. I found records in Nexus's files, records that you've kept hidden." Arcos's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew that Kaiden had discovered more than he should have. The tension in the room escalated further, and Riker, ever the skeptic, crossed his arms, ready to hear the truth that was about to surface. "It's true," Arcos finally admitted, his voice quieter. "The previous team never returned. We lost contact as soon as they entered the Vortex. We don't know what happened to them. All we have are fragments of data and chaotic recordings, none clear enough to determine their fate." Shock rippled through the room. The previous team had vanished, and instead of canceling the mission or reassessing the risk, Nexus had chosen to send a new team without telling them the truth. Dr. Alara felt a knot form in her stomach. Her worst fears were being confirmed, and now she wondered if she had any control over her own fate. Riker, on the other hand, was furious. "So we're just more of your guinea pigs, is that it?" Arcos remained stoic. "You have something the previous team didn't. More data, more technology, and a ship equipped to handle the Vortex's temporal anomalies. That gives you an advantage." "Or just a new way to get lost," Kaiden muttered, his frustration clear. Terran, who had remained silent until then, observed the conversation carefully. His eyes seemed to assess every word, as if he was considering something the others had yet to realize. The revelation about the previous team changed the atmosphere among the crew. The fragile trust that existed was now nearly shattered. Everyone knew they were about to enter a zone of unknown danger, and the only thing worse than the perils that lay ahead were the secrets Arcos and Nexus were still keeping. As the ship began its final sequence before entering the vortex, Kaiden cast one last look at Arcos, knowing that from this point on, they were on their own. If they wanted to survive, they would have to trust each other, or face the same darkness that had swallowed the previous team. The deep, reverberating sound of the ship's engines filled the air as the crew gathered in the hangar, ready to board. Each step they took toward the ship was a silent reminder of the imminent danger awaiting them. The tension was almost tangible, and no one dared to speak. The silence between them was louder than any words could be. Kaiden led the group, his cold and calculating eyes assessing every movement. He knew that after the revelation about the previous team, things would never be the same. Arcos had deceived them, and now they were about to enter the vortex with incomplete information and empty promises. But despite the betrayal, Kaiden knew he had to keep the team together. Any hesitation now could mean total failure. Riker was right behind him, checking his weapons and equipment for the third time. For him, every detail mattered, and the possibility of facing the unknown in the vortex only fueled his determination to be prepared for anything. He exchanged a glance with Kaiden, a silent acknowledgement that distrust was now their constant companion. Dr. Elara, though tense, remained focused. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her research instruments, but her mind was fixed on a single thought: the truth the vortex might reveal about her family's fate. The fear was undeniably there, but it was outweighed by her desperate need for answers. Terran, always the enigma, watched everything with a distant gaze. There was an unsettling calm in his demeanor, as if he already knew what to expect from the vortex. His thoughts, however, were far away. The connection he had with the Care was deeper than he had revealed, and he sensed that the vortex held secrets that could change the fate of everyone, not just the crew. As they approached the ship's ramp, the hangar lights bathed them in an artificial, almost surreal glow. The vortex, visible through the station's reinforced windows, spun silently in the distance, like an inevitable force patiently waiting for their arrival. "Check your suits and equipment," Kaiden ordered, his voice firm and authoritative. "We won't get second chances once we cross." The crew complied silently, each dealing with their own anxiety. The weight of what lay ahead seemed to intensify with every passing second. The vortex wasn't just a technological challenge, it was a threat to their very perception of reality. When everyone was ready, Kaiden gave the signal, and the ship's ramp began to slowly rise. The mechanical sound echoed through the hangar, marking the point of no return. As the ramp sealed shut, an even heavier silence enveloped the ship. The interior was softly lit, and the control panel flickered with a series of codes as the systems prepared for the journey. Kaiden looked at the crew, now in their positions. "This mission will be unlike anything we've ever faced. We don't know what we'll find in there, but we will come back, and whatever secret the vortex is hiding, we will uncover it." Riker and Dr. Elara nodded in agreement, but Terran kept his gaze fixed on the panel in front of him, showing no visible reaction. He knew the vortex wasn't just an obstacle, it was a gateway to something far greater, and only those willing to lose everything would find the answers. As the engines roared in preparation for takeoff, the ship began to lift gently, moving toward the vortex. The tension within the crew continued to rise, and uncertainty loomed over them like a shadow. Kaiden cast one last glance at the vortex through the ship's window. Their fate was sealed, and the first sparks of instability began to appear at the edges of the anomaly. The vortex awaited them, with all its mysteries and dangers, and they were about to find out whether humanity was truly ready to face the unknown. The ship slowly began crossing the distance between the station and the vortex. The silence inside the cabin was interrupted only by the beeping of the navigation systems and the soft hum of the machines adjusting their settings to handle the temporal anomalies. Dr. Elara, seated at her research station, watched the monitors intently. The readings were complex, far beyond anything anyone had anticipated. Waves of temporal distortion appeared and vanished erratically, creating patterns that made no sense. She tried to make sense of what these anomalies could mean, but the reality surrounding the vortex was unlike anything any known model could predict. "Something's not right," she murmured, almost to herself. Kaiden, ever observant, approached her station. "What are you seeing?" Alara shook her head, her eyes fixed on the screens. "These readings, the vortex is changing. The temporal distortions are intensifying. It might be that the vortex is becoming unstable." Riker nearby frowned at the sound of that. "Unstable? What does that mean for us?" Before Alara could answer, the ship began to tremble lightly. Small vibrations rippled through the hull, a sign that they were crossing into the vortex's boundary. The cabin lights flickered for a moment, and a sharp crackle of static echoed through the communication systems. "We're feeling the first waves of instability," Terran said, his voice calm, but with an undertone of concern. "The vortex is reacting to our approach." Terran's words carried more weight than just a technical warning. He knew the vortex held secrets he hadn't yet shared with the crew. The erratic behavior of the vortex might only be the beginning of something much deeper and far more dangerous. Kaiden moved quickly to the control panel. "Hold on tight. We're slowing down and adjusting course. We can't go into this blind." The ship decelerated, but the vibrations increased, and the screens began to display increasingly chaotic readings. The vortex, which had once spun with a hypnotic calm, now started to pulse with unknown energy. The colors along its edges intensified, and small sparks of light flickered like distant thunder, signaling an impending storm. "If we keep this pace, we'll be swallowed by the temporal anomalies," Alara warned, her voice growing tenser with every second. Terran, remaining steady, stared directly at the vortex through the window. "It's as if the vortex is responding to us. It's aware of our presence." Terran's words cast a shadow of fear over the crew. Could the vortex somehow be alive? Or was something inside it waiting for them? The ship shuddered violently this time, and the proximity alarm blared loudly, indicating they were about to cross the point of no return. Kaiden stood up and looked at the crew. "If we're going to do this, we need to be ready. We don't know what's on the other side, but there's no turning back now." With those words, the team's fate was sealed. The first signs of instability in the vortex were only the prelude to what was to come. And now, the crew was about to enter a realm where time, reality, and even their very existence could be twisted forever. With one final command, Kaiden authorized entry into the vortex, and the ship was engulfed by the bright vastness of the anomaly, leaving behind any trace of safety. The vortex swallowed them whole, and the crew was about to discover whether they would survive its depths or be lost forever, like those who had come before them. As the ship was swallowed by the vortex, the crew felt the weight of reality shatter around them. Time no longer followed a continuous line, but instead broke into scattered fragments. Kaiden gripped the console, trying to maintain control of the ship, as the internal systems flashed with warnings. The vortex's readings were incomprehensible. It felt like they were being pulled in multiple directions at once. Dr. Alara stared at the screens in horror. The temporal distortions were growing more intense. What she initially thought was just an anomaly now seemed to have a life of its own, as if the vortex was responding to their presence. "We're inside, but nothing here makes sense," she whispered. Terran remained silent, his eyes fixed on the distorted horizon. There was something about the vortex that he had yet to reveal, something the Care knew, and he did too. But the time for answers was slipping away. Suddenly, a flash of intense light shot through the ship's hull, and the sound of twisting metal filled the cabin. Riker, always prepared for the worst, was already gripping his weapon, but even he knew bullets wouldn't help against whatever was about to happen. "What was that?" Kaiden shouted, as the ship's systems struggled to adjust to the new reality. But no one had answers. The first sparks of instability had been just the beginning. Now, they were at the mercy of the vortex, and with each passing second, the ship seemed closer to being torn apart. The vortex had fully engulfed them, distorting time, space, and the very fabric of reality itself. There was no turning back. The crew was trapped in a place where the laws of physics didn't exist, and the secrets of the cosmos lay in wait, ready to be uncovered or to destroy them. But what if it were you? Would you be ready to face the unfathomable mysteries of the universe? Would you be willing to sacrifice everything in search of answers? The crew made their choice, and now they're at the mercy of the unknown. If you want to continue unraveling the mysteries of the universe, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next chapters of this epic journey.